Oil refineries incapable of manufacturing enough light hydrocarbons to electrify the world. With us is Ronald Stein. Ronald is an author, columnist, and energy consultant, and founder at PTS Advance, with a strong experience, huge experience in the oil sector. Good morning, Ronald.
Good morning, Armando.
Excellent to have you here. To start, please, Ronald, could you please explain us when you refer to light hydrocarbons, what are they and what they produce? What do they produce?
Well, you have to understand that the basics of the refining industry is a barrel of oil. And a barrel of oil is 42 gallons. And that it consists of what they call heavy hydrocarbons and light hydrocarbons. The heavier stuff, the thicker stuff, can make coke and coal and make the fuels. And you can squeeze about 10% of the barrel is what they consider light hydrocarbons, which you get all these chemicals and the derivatives that makes all the products that we see in our workplace, in our home, in the hospital. Most of the barrel of oil, most of the 90% of the barrel of oil is the heavier stuff. And the heavier stuff is used to make different kinds of fuel. You have diesel fuel and gasoline and bunker fuel for ships, some of the fuels for the spacecraft. And then you get involved in coke. Some of the stuff is actually manufactured and produced into coke that goes into making steel. So yeah, it's a combination of products, but in oil by itself is 100% useless unless you can manufacture it into something usable. And that's what the refineries are for. They get basically what they do is they cut the different products, from the barrel, and all the transportation fuels, all the oil derivatives, it comes out of a barrel of fuel. And if you don't have a refinery, you just have some black oil.
Yeah.
Totally useless.
So you are saying that we have naphtha and similar products that are
Right.
available. Yeah, naphtha is
Yeah.
one of the most important one.
Right. That's one of the heavier ones. Yes.
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 Are,
And
are there others?
I'm not a chemical engineer. I could, if I was, I could probably rattle off and totally confuse you with the names. But yeah, they all have different names. But it's basically, how many hydrocarbons and oxygen components are are made up of the element that they're cutting out of the crude oil.
Mhm. Yeah, perfect. And these products are probably inputs for manufacturing equipment in general, as you said, but these products are input to construct turbines, solar panels, batteries, and EVs. This is a
Well,
good point.
exactly. Yeah. If in fact, go back to the beginning, go back to the 1900s when when oil was being put into use and refineries were starting to come into existence. And when you take a look at electricity, electricity came after, I want to repeat that word, after crude oil, because all the products that make wind turbines, solar panels, the electric bulb that, Edison invented, they're all made with the oil derivatives manufactured from crude oil. You can't make a wind turbine without crude oil. You can't make a solar panel without crude oil.
Yeah, interesting. There is the main point that kept my attention is when you call refiners as old refiners. What exactly means old refiners?
Well, when I say old, because especially here in the United States, we haven't built one in 47 years. There's in the entire world, there's about 700 refineries, and they're all built around the same period of time. Around 50 years ago, and basically they're the ones that are running today. There's very seldom you're going to see a new refinery being built. especially in the wealthy countries that have all these environmental controls. Um, I say the good news, it's the good news and the bad news. There are a lot of refineries being built, but there's being built in China and Asia. They're building, I think, more than 80 new ones, but they have very weak environmental controls, and yeah, so they can put them in wherever they want.
I suppose United States has around 100 refineries. Brazil has
About
14.
100, about 135.
Oh,
But of the 700 refineries around the world, it's projected with all the environmental pressures that about 20% of them are going to be shutting down in the next 5 years. And that's 140 manufacturers. These are the refineries that are manufacturing all the oils and chemicals, to make all the products in our daily lives. So as society demands more and more products, there's less and less of a supply to support that. So we're going to be faced with shortages and inflation in perpetuity.
interesting. Because these 80 refineries you mentioned that Asia is implementing, they are new and probably they can make more light products instead of
Yeah,
heavy.
they'll probably be like the basic refineries, where they can basically take a 42-gallon barrel of crude oil and get the diesels and the aviation fuel and the gasoline out of it and the oil derivatives. As it turns out, as human ingenuity has implemented over the years, it turns out that the light hydrocarbons that makes all the oil derivatives is actually becoming more important to our lifestyle than the fuels, because people working from home, so they need iPads and communication equipment, and that communication equipment is all made with those oil derivatives. And so it's yeah, our lifestyle is becoming more dependent on the 10% of the barrel. That's become much more important than the other 90%. And so people don't want the fuel, they just want the derivatives. But you can't squeeze that much blood out of a turnip.
So in the near future, probably you are be importing, West will be importing much more light products that we have today. And the dependence, this is the point you are making, the dependence from Asia.
Yes, we totally dependent on them. It's really ironic that we're so dependent on China right now to go green, because all the exotic minerals and metals, the lithium and the cobalts, and to build EV batteries and wind turbines and solar panels are controlled by China. And since we're stopping all in the United States oil production as much as possible, we're dependent on OPEC and Russia for oil. So the United States is not in the best position. We're dependent on OPEC and Russia for oil, and we're dependent on China to go green,
Yes,
and we're stuck in the
yes,
middle.
yes. And the supply chain for service products, materials, equipment, do they have control of that, or they import from everywhere? I mean, China and Asia.
Well, they're going to have control of the supply chain of the products of the oil derivatives to make, iPhones and defibrillators, that type of thing. So, yeah, that's just like they control the lithium and the cobalt to make an EV battery, they'll control everything else to keep U.S. hospitals running.
Yeah, the raw materials for the construction of these plants and hospitals and refineries, they have control of these products too.
They're gaining control, and
Wow.
we're relinquishing it as fast as we can,
And
which
why,
is frustrating, but
yeah, why
that's how
the
it's going.
U.S. Yeah, why the U.S. lost this control? Because in the past, the U.S. Had the control of all of these things. No.
Oh, totally. Yes. Yeah. We basically have a huge economy here, and but yeah, over the years we've been relinquishing more and more control outside the United States. And when Nixon was president, there was an oil embargo, and that was 50 years ago. And today we're actually more vulnerable to another embargo than we were 50 years ago. Now we got ore to be concerned with. We got lithium, cobalt, and like I say, China's going to have more than 80 refineries, and we're probably going to have less than 80 in the next few years. And so, yeah, they're going to basically be controlling everything.
And there is no plan to the United States and for the West countries to construct new refineries. We are freezing.
No, no, for two reasons. One is environmentally, you're never going to get a permit, and financially, you're going to have to finance it yourself because the environmental, social, and governance movement, ESG movement, they're divesting in all fossil fuels. And so, yeah, there's very little money to finance it. It's really going to be self-financed, and I'm not sure who's got the guts to put up billions of dollars. These are expensive facilities, and so it's a lot easier just to lay back and let China take over.
Yeah, so the West has an energy security issue and sovereignty to autonomy.
Well, I think it's a national security issue because, yeah, like I say, I live here in California. We're the fourth largest economy in the world. And California is really setting the tone for the United States. Back in '95, California oil production and Alaska imports, coming down by ship, accounted for like 95% of the demands of the state. But the state has been motivated to reduce oil production. And so today, instead of being dependent on 5% from the world, we're now dependent on more than 60% of our oil from the world. It's being imported to California. And so, yeah, if there's an embargo, California gets hit. And if we get hit, being the fourth largest economy in the world, we're going to impact the entire country.
Mhm, mhm. Great, great. Ronald, I saw information from SP Global. I'm not sure you saw this, that fossil fuels are the primary source of basic petrochemicals, but only about 9-10% of global fossil fuel production is ultimately used to petrochemical feedstock. Is it is it correct, this information?
Yes, yes, yeah. The 10% of the fossil fuel production is, yeah, it's reducing. The effort is to reduce as much production here in the United States as possible. And all I can say is the efforts are being successful. There is less production. There was a lot of fracking that's been turned off by President Biden. And so yeah, it's we want to continue living our lifestyle, but our lifestyle is only supported by the oil derivatives that come out of fossil fuels.
And natural gas in this game. What's the importance of natural gas for
Well,
petrochemical?
there's three fossil fuels. There's oil, crude oil, natural gas, and coal. And they're all lumped into these are the fossil fuels. Now, coal is primarily used to make electricity, coal-fired power plants. Coal is used to make steel. Natural gas makes a lot of fertilizers. Natural gas is used to make a lot of power plants. Crude oil by itself, and there are three distinct fossil fuels. Crude oil is virtually never used to make electricity. It's only
Yeah.
refined to make fuels and oil derivatives. And so there are three different fossil fuels that do different things. But everybody wants to get rid of fossil fuels, and so natural gas is going with it, coal is going with it, and they're the innocent bystanders. But the main focus is they want to get rid of crude oil.
Mhm.
And but yeah, like I say, China and India, they're building a coal-fired power plant almost every week. And but it's abundant, it's reliable, it's inexpensive, and
Yeah.
so yeah, and they don't have the environmental controls or the labor controls. So yeah, they can do what the four wealthy countries are not doing. Because the wealthy countries, we have, the United States, Australia, the UK, um, and Germany. There's an economy. We can basically finance technology to clean up the emissions out of a refinery. Refineries today are clean compared to what they were in the 1900s. They were just smoking away. When you drive by a refinery today, you see all this smoke coming out. It's not smoke, it's steam.
Same.
And so there's very, very little emissions out of the refineries
Yeah,
because of the technology. But you need an economy to develop that technology. But most of the world, there's 8 billion in the world, and 80% of the world, which is Armando, that's more than 6 billion people. They're living on less than $10 a day. They can't subsidize themselves out of a paper bag. And so, you take the four wealthy countries, the US, Germany, UK, and Australia, we represent like 6% of the world. It's like, a little over 500 million versus 8 billion people. And, we're trying to set the standards for the other 8 billion. They can't afford to do what we're doing.
yeah, 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 yeah.
They haven't even
That's
gone through the Industrial Revolution yet. And so it's really pathetic that we see what's in front of us.
right. Narrow vision.
Narrow is very narrow.
But you mentioned in your article that we will not electrify the world. So that's right. We will not electrify the world.
What do you mean electrify? Electrify?
Electrify, you mentioned, is
Well, to
hydrocarbons.
electrify the world, you need these light hydrocarbons to make wind turbines, to make solar panels. You get rid of the oil industry, you get rid of wind turbines, you get rid of solar panels. I mean, we're back to the 1700s when there was nothing.
Yeah, yeah. So electricity is not always we still need fossil fuels for a long time. Do you believe in a reduction of oil demand for the future?
Oh, definitely. Yes, yes. I mean, efficiencies and conservation are really the priorities for mankind because you take a look at the automobile. The first automobiles got 8 miles to a gallon. Today they're getting, if it's just on gasoline, 40 to 60 and greater. So the automobiles are becoming more efficient. That's the good news. The bad news is a lot more of them. And
Yeah,
so a lot of fuel is being consumed. But no, we definitely do not want to be wasteful and be a throwaway society. We have to treat it as a very valuable commodity. It's not going to be there forever. The world's been around for billions of years, and hopefully be around for billions more. I may not be here, but
me too.
it's the people that are coming behind us. Yeah, they're going to want to enjoy the same kind of lifestyle. And but the one real simple concept that people don't understand is everything that needs electricity, everything, 100% of things that need electricity today are made with the oil derivatives manufactured from fossil fuels. And so I'm all for getting rid of the fossil fuels and the emissions, but there's got to be a backup plan before we do that. Before we jump out of the airplane without a parachute, we'd like to have a tested parachute, and but we're not doing that. And like you say, it's scary that they want put in wind turbines, solar panels, and shut down the refinery.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, the future parts for your wind turbines, solar panels may not be available because you shut down that refinery.
yeah, that's right. In 2021, the general director of the International Energy Agency said to stop new oil projects. May 2021. I remember this message was very strong for me. And the oil company, big oil, are changing their minds and returning to oil investments now. Shell was one of these companies that last week, I suppose, uh, make a statement saying, I will return to invest in. Well, how do you see this transformation and this kind of fight that they may have?
I don't think it's a fight. I think it's a matter of reality. There's no replacement, and so until we have a replacement, it, it's it's got to be oil. That's the only way our modern society is operating because everything changed in 1900. When the Beverly Hillbillies discovered oil, we now have refineries and we now have products we never had before 1900. We had no medical industry, we had no electronics, we had no communications,
Yeah,
we had no tires, we had no asphalt for roads, and we had no pesticides to control the locust and the insects. And like I say, and basically it's short memories, from 1900. And I if you get rid of fossil fuels, and the industry knows this, it's just they're just fighting an uphill battle. But you can look at all the different graphs, from the energy societies around the world, that 80% of the world's energy is coming from oil and coal and natural gas because we haven't found a substitute. You know,
yeah,
Natural gas helps make the pesticides and fertilizers. Wind turbines can't do that. If you want to continue feeding the world, you're going to need those products. And like I say, I think the industry, like myself, would like an alternative. But until that alternative shows up, Armando, we've had 200 years to find a replacement. People come up with patents and whatever, and within a couple of years you can clone it, duplicate it. We haven't been able to duplicate what comes out of oil. And oil is, by itself, very few people have seen or touched oil. It's black, dirty tar mess. I mean, it's horrendous, and it takes a very, very expensive process to put it through the refining to break it down into usable products. But crude oil by itself is totally useless.
yeah, yeah. That's right. That's right. Excellent. So the conclusion is that we need all energies, but fossil fuels, we will survive with them for a long time.
Exactly. Like I say, until we find a replacement, it's going to be there. And with all the pressure to reduce oil production, all we're doing is making these products more expensive because there, as I mentioned, there's going to be less refineries, making these oil derivatives, and it's a matter of supply and demand. You're reducing the manufacturing capability by like 20%, 700, losing 140 sites. At the same time, the world is trying to catch up to the four wealthy countries, and they would like to have, you know, iPhones and Zoom meetings, and
Yeah,
clean water and clean sanitation. And as the demands of the world keep increasing against a diminishing supply, whoa, you're looking at inflation and shortages in perpetuity. And it's going to be very, very expensive. And I don't know the
yeah.
turn. Like you say, I, everybody that's against oil refineries, I'm in total favor of their opinion.
Yeah,
Just show me what you want to do to replace it.
place. Yeah, interesting. Before we go, tell us the new article that you wrote these days, I suppose, published recently, and where can be found?
Basically, Heartland Institute is a good place to go. Um, the Center for Constructive Tomorrow, CFACT, cfact.org or Heartland. You'll find my articles, and yeah, you just put my name into Google, and I'm up all over the place on energy
Excellent.
literacy. And so, yeah, I'm easy to find. And so, and yeah, and my email address is my name, Ronald.Stein, and it's a long at one word, energyliteracy.net.
Excellent.
Ronald.Stein at energyliteracy.net. Drop me an
We can
email.
find.
Be delighted to add you to my mailings. My op-eds go out, weekly, and they're educational and thoughtful. And I like to say, I would just love to have everybody talk about energy at the dinner table and their
Yeah.
layman's terms and facilitate that discussion.
Thank you so much for the nice conversation, Ronald Stein. It was a pleasure
Okay,
for me.
Armando, you have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Bye bye.
Okay, take care.